The silence of the beginning wasn't just an empty void. It was the entire cosmos, with its gears locked in absolute, flawless precision. It was the massive, overwhelming pulse of order, where no physical collision or energy loss, zero entropy, ever occurred. Our stage today is Eden in the East. Guys, whatever lazy, peaceful little orchard you remember from children's books, erase it from your memory right now. The Eden described in ancient texts was a multi-dimensional control zone, a sanctuary maintaining absolute order that completely shatters human comprehension. Four massive rivers, Pishon, Gihon, Hiddekel, and Euphrates, violently surged, carving through the spine of this rugged earth. These currents weren't just water. They were the literal, pulsating heartbeat of the Creator's life force, heavily defining the boundaries of the sanctuary as they resonated against a flawless mineral floor paved with pure gold, bdellium, and onyx. At the very heart of this sanctuary, in the deepest dimension where earth and sky collided, two colossal trees stood tall, as if holding up the universe itself. The tree of life, the axis of all creation, and the tree of knowledge, the ultimate symbol of the supreme admin's untouchable authority. These two monoliths weren't just some plants soaking up nutrients from the dirt. They were massive, multi-dimensional cores, bending the very density of space and radiating an indescribably brilliant wave of energy. And right in the center of this flawless space stood the first android forged from clay and given the breath of the Absolute. No, the first human, Adam. If you dive into the deep records of the Jewish Midrash, Adam, before the fall, wasn't some frail, naked body like we have now. His initial render size was cosmic, literally stretching from the earth to the very edge of the sky. And his surface was coated in a blinding armor of light that reflected the absolute glory of the Creator. The radiance blasting from this armor of light was so overwhelming that there are obscure records stating even angels mistook him for the Creator and tried to bow down. Eve was exactly the same. They were creations, but simultaneously the only proxy rulers authorized to govern this massive sanctuary. With every step they took, the minerals of the earth literally parted to make way for them. They wielded transcendental, godlike wisdom, piercing through the cellular essence of the beasts to grant them their true names. According to the Book of Jubilees, they enjoyed this perfect dominion for 7 years, resonating flawlessly with cosmic providence. But no matter how perfectly woven a system is, a fatal anomaly always exploits the smallest crack. From the dense, massive thickets of Eden, the wisest and most cunning of all wild beasts silently revealed itself. This entity, which the original Hebrew text calls Nahash. Let me guess, you're picturing a snake slithering on the ground, tasting the dirt. Think again. As the apocryphal life of Adam and Eve and ancient rabbinic literature unanimously testify, the original Nahash was a blindingly intelligent being with a massive physique, walking perfectly upright on arms and legs. Known as the Shining One, as the root of its name implies, it was a phenomenal entity, its entire body covered in brass-like scales that reflected celestial brilliance. But here's the philosophically heavier fact. Ancient traditions say there was an entity pulling the strings behind this Nahash, or directly riding on top of it. It was Samael, the fallen angel who incited rebellion out of sheer jealousy of humanity. Using this blinding beast as a physical vehicle and a mouthpiece, Samael glided into the deep shadows cast by the Tree of Knowledge. There wasn't a single sound of friction as he sliced through the air. The gaze of Nahash, this colossal upright intellect, locked onto Eve, who was alone. When he bent down right in front of Eve's eyes, the atmospheric currents of Eden violently and unpredictably warped.
Did the Absolute truly say to you, "You shall not eat from any tree in this sanctuary"?
His voice wasn't some beastly growl. It was a mesmerizing, hollow vibration echoing through space. It was a lethal frequency, injecting the very first drop of doubt into the perfect providence of creation. The defensive shield surrounding Eve, her armor of light, subtly flickered for just a moment. Eve stared into the deep pupils of the radiant Nahash. Beyond those pitch-black eyes, the cunning will of Samael was flashing.
We may eat the fruit of the trees in the garden, but of the fruit of the tree in the center of the sanctuary, he said, "You shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die."
Eve's answer right here. This is where a fatal error occurred. The Creator never said anything about not touching it. This subtle distortion of data that Eve added out of fear, Samael and Nahash sank their teeth precisely into that vulnerability. The very next scene in Jewish tradition is an absolute masterclass in suspense. Nahash didn't just use words to tempt Eve. He extended a massive arm and violently shoved Eve straight into the trunk of the Tree of Knowledge. Her radiant body of light took an impact that defied physical limits.
Look, you touched the tree, yet you did not die. If touching it doesn't kill you, do you really think eating it will?
Confronted with this overwhelming physical reality, Eve's logic completely collapsed. The shadow of this colossal intellect swallowed Eve whole, and a thunderous, yet sickeningly sweet, sentence sliced through the air.
You will certainly not die.
Nahash's words were a lethal system variable, weaponized with flawless logic.
For he knows that on the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will become like the Creator, knowing good and evil.
Eve's eyes were magnetically pulled to the tree in the center of the garden. It's usually painted as an apple in Western art, but according to intense debates among rabbis, it could have been grapes that ring out sorrow, figs, or even wheat, the raw material for bread. Whatever the form, a place that was once just a terrifying, restricted system zone now bore fruit so desirable for gaining wisdom, blasting out a furious wave of energy. This wasn't mere appetite. It was the massive, coup-like craving of a creation wanting to hijack godhood and dictate the laws of the universe on its own terms. Eve's hand sliced through the void and snapped the fruit off the branch. The moment it happened, the Zohar records that the tree itself triggered a massive resonance. The air in Eden came to a dead, heavy halt. The exact split second the woman swallowed the fruit, and at her urging, her husband Adam also bit into the flesh. An overwhelming vacuum state hit, where even a roar would be a luxury, as if the entire universe just gasped for air. The change was instantaneous and colossal. That blinding armor of light that wrapped their entire bodies, supposedly protecting them from external threats forever? Its form collapsed and evaporated into thin air in a flash. With their cosmic tier ultimate shield fully shut down, all that was left were fragile bodies, helplessly exposed to the cold air of the earth. For the first time since Eden's creation, a chilling wind scraped across their mucous membranes. It was the exact moment entropy, the law of decay and corruption, was physically installed. The ontological shame of realizing they were naked, combined with the existential terror of being downgraded from absolute rulers to frail organic matter, utterly hijacked their nervous systems. Plummeting from the realm of the infinite into a finite prison, the two humans shivered, frantically weaving wide fig leaves to cover their lower halves, and crammed themselves between the dark roots of the colossal trees. And then, the atmospheric currents of the earth began to heavily convulse. This was no simple weather anomaly. A chilling, majestic shockwave rattled the entire floor of the sanctuary and violently shook the roots of the ancient trees. The presence of the Absolute, walking the garden in the cool of the day, was approaching, translated into a massive physical wave. In the face of the Absolute's inescapable manifestation, a heart-crushing pressure choked the breath right out of them.
Adam, where are you?
A heavy, colossal voice, striking down like the very eye of the storm, shook the heavens and the earth. Guys, do you really think the Absolute didn't know? He wasn't asking for a location because he lost their coordinates. It was a bone-chilling interrogation aimed at a creation that had derailed from the orbit it was meant to stand in under the providence of creation, completely losing its existential coordinates. It was a heavy demand to confront exactly what they had just done. Covered in dirt, with a body stripped of all its light, Adam cautiously crawled out from the cracks of the tree.
I heard your sound in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked. So I hid myself.
A chain reaction of blame-shifting excuses immediately followed. Adam blamed Eve. Eve blamed Nahash. But the price for creation's illegally accessing admin privileges triggered a system reorganization on a cosmic scale. The Absolute's punishment was swift and devastatingly heavy. First to fall was the arrogant intellect, Nahash. The radiant skeleton and legs that kept him upright were snapped and twisted with a heavy, deafening crunch by an invisible, massive pressure. The scales that once reflected celestial light mutated into the color of dirt, and he was forcibly downgraded into an obscure creature, cursed to crawl on its belly and swallow the dust of the earth for eternity. This massive physical collapse of an upright intellect was just the prelude to humanity's impending freefall. The once perfect earth would no longer yield life willingly as it had before. The cursed ground would spit out razor-sharp thistles and thorns to scar human flesh, and the man was condemned to bone-grinding, agonizing labor, sweating until the moisture dripped from his brow into the dirt, just to barely prolong his survival. The woman was burdened with the massive agony of childbirth that tests the absolute limits of biology, along with the oppressive yoke of hierarchy being subjugated to her husband. Their physical bodies, once promised eternal life, were now locked inside the finite timetable of death, doomed to age, get sick, and rot back into the red dirt. But right before executing the expulsion, the Absolute performs a highly symbolic ritual. For the first time ever, life force was forcefully taken. The Absolute stripped the thick hide of a beast and tailored clothes to cover the shivering humans. If we borrow a little wordplay from the original Hebrew text, the empty space where the light used to be was now patched over by animal skin. It was a tear-jerking act of mercy from the Creator to protect their weakened bodies from extreme environmental shifts. But at the same time, it marked the dawn of an ecosystem where your survival demands the brutal sacrifice of another life.
Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever.
Finally, the system's eviction order dropped. The grand expulsion was executed. On the eastern border of the sanctuary, the dimensional gates to Eden slammed shut. When Adam and Eve, violently thrown out onto the harsh, barren, unknown wasteland, looked back in despair, the entities blocking the sanctuary's entrance weren't those cute little baby angels you see in classical paintings. It was the cherubim, overwhelming, combat-class divine entities with the faces of a lion, an ox, an eagle, and a man fused together, constantly morphing in multiple dimensions, spreading massive wings that crushed the air and completely hijacked the space itself. And right between those cherubim, a violently spinning, flaming sword deployed, tearing through the fabric of space. No one was holding it. It didn't even have a hilt. Generating its own infinite power source in midair, spinning, folding, and expanding, this multidimensional firewall incinerated the surrounding atmosphere, permanently severing any corrupted organism from ever approaching. Standing before that colossal firewall, ready to obliterate anything that came near, the first humans dropped their heads in utter despair. The perfect cosmic balance, the era of the sanctuary, was permanently terminated. Stripped of their armor of light and cloaked in the dead skins of beasts, the man and woman took their first heavy steps into the unknown wasteland, taking the freezing, biting sandstorm head-on. Out on that barren earth they were stepping into, a long, brutal history of human survival and conflict, where brother would slaughter brother and stain the ground red, was waiting with its jaws wide open. So guys, is this heavy narrative just some fabricated myth? Modern archaeology has been grinding to find fragments of Eden, searching around the Mesopotamian highlands, or ancient temple ruins like Göbekli Tepe, tying them to these ancient paradise folktales. At the dawn of the agricultural revolution, early humanity had to abandon the lush embrace of nature from their hunter-gatherer days. They had to till the harsh dirt, enduring extreme climate shifts and grueling labor. It was a bone-deep collective trauma. The academic hypothesis that the shock of this massive environmental severance fossilized into the archetype of this expulsion myth is still an incredibly thrilling analysis that gets my heart racing. If we dissect this event with the scalpel of philosophy, eating the fruit wasn't just a simple rule violation. It was an existential leap where humanity forcibly acquired self-consciousness. Kicked out of a paradise where they lived blissfully ignorant, just taking what was given, they strapped the massive burden of free will around their own necks, now forced to define good and evil and take responsibility for themselves. As the price for leaving their comfortable subordination to the absolute and coveting the throne of a god, humans were thrown into the wasteland of deep philosophical questioning, forced to endlessly ask what the meaning of their lives is until the day they die. All right, now let's look at this colossal phenomenon through the cold, hard lens of modern physics. What exactly is the essence of the Garden of Eden? It was a place that blatantly defied the second law of thermodynamics, a miraculous closed system strictly hard-coded with zero energy loss and a 0% entropy increase rate. But then, users with zero admin privileges went ahead and illegally injected a restricted external variable straight into the mainframe. At that exact second, the suppressed entropy exploded and the system balance utterly crashed. And on top of that, you've got cherubim guarding the gate and a flaming sword infinitely spinning on its own in midair. A sword without a hilt running on infinite power, equipped with gravitational field control tech and a massive fusion reactor? The law of conservation of energy is crying in the corner right now. Deploying a multi-dimensional firewall like that in ancient times, researchers would literally pass out trying to run the numbers with fluid dynamics. But hey, what can you do? That's the exact flavor of mythology we love. Let's just say plausibility got completely incinerated by that flaming sword. I'm a STEM major after all. I don't know how I went from solving math equations to debugging ancient Near Eastern firewall system logs. But this right here is humanity's most epic, deepest mystery, the beginning of the Codex.